Hello and welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast. I have two things that I'm really excited to share with you in this week's podcast and then next week as well. And I think that these two things might give you some inspiration to sort of think outside what we are told as business owners, as entrepreneurs, and as yoga teachers who are running a business. Now, both of these things came out of some challenging moments and very difficult emotions. It kind of felt like, imagine that you are in the rain and it's very muddy and you're walking along and you lose one of your rubber boots. Now, this has happened to me many times in my life. If this hasn't happened to you, if you haven't been out walking in some deep mud, then maybe you don't know, but there is this amazing amount of suction that happens when your boot gets stuck in really deep mud. And if you've had this happen, you might know that when you go to take that next step, your foot comes out of the boot and all that you have on now is a sock. And sometimes you step in the mud. And I just want to highlight that this is what it has felt like to be in some serious mud where it's messy, I feel stuck. And I know when I hit this type of a cycle in my life or in my business, I know that it's time to learn, unlearn, and just let it percolate. And I also know that it's time for me to do some inner work, to make sure I'm doing my yoga, to make sure I'm getting out in nature so that I can then, put my work out there and do the work that I want to show up to do, taking yoga out into the world. So I haven't even introduced myself yet. I'm just rambling on like you know who I am. Let me introduce myself in case you are brand new to this podcast. Thank you for listening. It's amazing to connect with you. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and this podcast is being recorded on the traditional territory of the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Mississauga people. I'm continuing to learn about the culture of the Anishinaabe people while also learning about my settler ancestors who came here to Turtle Island generations ago. I'm a Canadian yoga teacher, a mom of 3, an entrepreneur, and someone who really loves to ask questions. And that's why the podcast is a good fit. I love that we get to hang out together, learn together, think of more questions, and I'm just really grateful that you're here. I'm also super grateful for OfferingTree. I use and love this software in my own business. They are bringing the podcast to you today. I love this software because it automates the bookings, payments, Zoom links, reminders, and so much more in my own business. And we have a special podcast listener discount code for you if you decide to check it out. That's over at OfferingTree.com/Shannon. Today's episode is also brought to you by Pelvic Health Professionals, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this because parts of this relate to today's episode. But really, the summary of Pelvic Health Professionals is this very cool place where we get to hang out as movement educators, yoga teachers, and healthcare professionals, and we get to learn the most up-to-date information about pelvic health. And we get to do a lot of yoga as well along with it. So if you want to check that out, that's pelvichealthprofessionals.com. Alrighty, let's get right into today's podcast episode. I'm very excited to share it with you because, first of all, part of this feels like a gift that we can give to all of our listeners, especially if you know someone who is dealing with a cancer diagnosis now or a past one, or if you work with the cancer community or you want to learn how to support this community. So you might have heard that Tyla Arnason, who was on the podcast not that long ago, back in episode 347, she's teaching a 6-week yoga for cancers of the pelvic region for anyone who wants to attend. So you are invited. And I want to tell you a little behind the scenes about this. So we had set the pricing up for this series in kind of something that turned out to be a little bit complicated, but we really wanted to make it so that it was very accessible for anyone who is dealing with a cancer diagnosis. We wanted to make sure that the price was accessible because we know that it can cost a lot of money to have an illness and to need to take time off work and go to doctor's appointments and all of the things. So we had these different prices set up. It was like, okay, if you have a cancer diagnosis, this is your price. Or, here's the other price and here's an early bird. And it got kind of messy. And we also wanted to make sure it was accessible for someone who doesn't have the finances right now to pay the full amount. So see how it got really messy? I'm so glad that in that muck, in that mess, Tyla and I had a really great chat, and we decided to try something we've never done before with a full yoga series. We made it pay what you can. And I am so amazed with how it's working. It really is working, and that's what I wanted to share with you today. So I'll share the details for two reasons. In case you want to join us, I'll tell you how you can do that. Or in case you decide like, hey, I want to try something similar to this. I want to do a buy donation class or workshop. I really want to give this a try. So in case you want to join us, the yoga series starts on January the 10th. Not to worry if you've missed that. There are replays. It's being led, like I said, by Tyla Arnason. I'll be there participating and helping with the tech and welcoming everyone in. And this series is created for anyone, like I said, who's dealing with a cancer diagnosis, whether that's past or present, and also for the people who are supporting them. And that means you, dear yoga teacher. If you think, hey, I might have someone in my class who has cancer and I want to hang out and do some yoga and learn how to teach to this community. So our focus is on pelvic cancer, but really anyone can attend if they have cancer or not. So like I said, we switched this up to be pay what you can. And here's the part that I think is just nice to know in case you decide to try this. So we had barely advertised this series. As many of you know, my focus has really been on the Yoga for Peace, and we've been switching things around with the podcast. And I know in those moments, okay, I'm not going to get all the marketing out that I'd like to. So we did 2 emails so far, a few Facebook and Instagram posts, not a lot. And I'm so excited to tell you that we've now met the minimum that we needed to pay our guest teacher and not lose money. And we were prepared to do this, quite frankly. I was like, well, we'll try it as an experiment. And if people don't pay very much or not enough to cover the cost, well, I guess that's going to be a huge Christmas gift that we're giving our community. But it worked. So if you're interested, you can still join and it's still pay what you can. And I even want to see if we can do this in the future to have more pay what you can events. What I really love about this is that I saw people pay a little extra to support others who can't pay as much. And that is what really lights me up. That's what makes me love our yoga community even more. So I saw teachers, paying what they could, and then saw some paying extra. And I just think what a beautiful way to support each other. So if you would like to do yoga with us and learn how to share yoga for cancer, or if you know someone who's working with this population now, or if you know someone who has cancer, make sure to share this. If you are wanting to check it out or share it, it's over at pelvichealthprofessionals.com. Look under yoga, and then the drop down there, it'll be called Yoga for Cancer. And there's more information on there. And you get a full year of access to the replay, and you can start this at any time, whenever you can fit it into your schedule if you're listening after the series is over. Connected yoga teachers, I also want to tell you something else. You know how we use and love OfferingTree? They sponsor the podcast. I love to talk about them on the podcast when I can. Well, the coolest thing was when we switched this over to pay what you can. Sinead and I were actually on a call like looking at the software and just looking at how does this work. And it was so easy to set up. We both knew that it was there. Sinead knew more about it than I did because she's used the software more than I have. And it was so easy to set up. We could set it so that there was a minimum payment. So the minimum payment is $1. And I really like that there's a minimum payment. So you could decide it's by donation, but maybe the donation is whatever amount you set. And then people can choose the amount and sign up. I also love that when it's $1, it's some commitment, even though it's only $1. So go check out how this looks as the user. And if you are looking for a booking software where you can take payments and set up so many different options like pay what you can or by donation, make sure to check out OfferingTree. It's really the best software I've seen in my, 18, almost 19 years of being a yoga teacher and managing yoga studios. And we also have a discount code for you over at OfferingTree.com/Shannon. Okay, now I also wanted to share this story with you and this thing that we tried out that worked because it's one example of how I started to think outside of what I've been taught as an entrepreneur. And to be really honest, I've also taught the same way when I work with yoga studios and yoga teachers in my consultation calls, and here on the podcast. I've talked a lot about setting your rate and, pricing your offerings and making sure you're getting paid what you need to keep going as a yoga teacher. And I know that all of those things are very important. And I also know that we live in this system that is built on capitalism and so many other systems that feel pretty uncomfortable for yoga teachers. And that discomfort, made me think, okay, what if we just kind of flip things around here? What if we change this and try it? So I'm just wondering, if I leave this question with you, what can we do in our own business to really start to disrupt these systems that, don't feel great? What if we make our offerings more accessible while we still get paid so we can keep doing this work? And I also want to give a huge shout out to Emily Light, who was on the podcast, and we were talking in episode 341 about how she organizes things with online learning so she can really take in lots of information and keep it organized. And I have something to tell you about that as well. But just all of a sudden, she said that she was now doing classes by donation. And that just stuck in my mind. I was like, wonder if I could do that. And she had told me how well it was doing. And so I want to give a shout out to her. Also, if you are curious, you can listen to episode 341 to learn about her great organization system. She talked about how she uses Airtable. And I thought, okay, it'd be so cool if we could learn more from Emily and have a video so we can learn along with her. So we actually booked her in for our January call inside of Pelvic Health Professionals. So that's January 16th. It's happening in 2024. And if you want to sign up for that, you can go to pelvichealthprofessionals.com. When you sign up, you'll be able to access the live call. And if it's done as a live call, we'll have it in there for you as the replay. I'm excited about this because any bit of organization helps us to keep going in our businesses and to make it so that we have less headaches and a little more ease in our businesses. So it was Emily that got me thinking about this by donation model. And maybe you're thinking about doing the same thing, or maybe you're wondering what would happen if I did this by donation class? So I would love to hear from you if you're already doing this, or if you're thinking about doing this, or if you have more questions. You can tag me in the Connected Yoga Teacher Facebook group, or you can comment on our show notes page for this episode. That's at theconnectedyogateacher.com/357. Also, it's so great if you can share what we're doing, share the yoga series, like I said, share this episode with other yoga teachers. Keep sharing your questions with us. That's really the fuel for the podcast. And if you want to hang out in real time, We are doing, like I said, the yoga series, January 10th to February 14th, 2024. And yes, there's a replay. That's the yoga for pelvic cancer with Tyla. And then, as I said, we have some calls coming up inside of Pelvic Health Professionals. So I've already told you about Emily Light's Organize Your Business call in January. February, we're going to be talking about fibroids and pelvic health. We have Dr. Jocelyn Wallace coming in to talk to us about that. And then in March, I'm so excited that Mary Redinger is going to talk with us about creating a thriving business. Mary has set things up to really work one-on-one with people, and I know our pelvic health professionals are interested in learning more about how to grow that part of their business. So if you want to join any of these calls, visit pelvichealthprofessionals.com to join. Alrighty, I am going to wrap up here, but I do want to tell you that next week on the podcast, I'm going to share an amazing group for yoga teachers who have maybe been feeling isolated, helpless, and alone in the work that we've been doing right now, social justice-wise, really taking yoga off the mat out into the world. And so if you want to check out that group now before next week, it's on Discord. I know it's another app. I just learned how to use it. It's super easy. It's very organized. And this is a cool place. Shout out of thanks to Ray Zott, who created this so we could support each other and have a very organized place where we can organize our actions to take care of the planet and each other and the people on this planet. So check that out. I'll put a link in the show notes. If you have questions for me, leave me a voicemail over at theconnectedyogateacher.com. And oh yeah, I need to thank our team over here, Suzanne, Crunch, Sinead. Thank you so much for all of the work that you do here on the podcast, but also the other work that you're doing in the world. Ooh, I want to tell you about one other thing. If you know Crunch, she is doing some really cool workshops about how to make travel a little bit more about, doing some inner work. So using travel as a way to really grow who you are and connect with who you are. It's very cool what she's doing. Crunch, I'm going to make sure, because Crunch does the show notes, please put a link to your website, the best page that people should go to check this out. Probably your homepage on your website, but you decide, Crunch, whatever page it is. She's going to be cringing a little bit. Sometimes she's shy to share her amazing work, but I'm not. Thank you, dear listener, for being here, for making this podcast possible, for doing the amazing work you are doing in the world. I hope that you are finding moments of joy and peace as we move into this new year together, even when there's a lot of muck, even if your boot falls off in the mud. I hope this podcast offers some support and some stability. And as usual, I'm going to leave you with a question. What will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?